Hey, great to have you here. So back today with another Dragon Ball SH Figuarts video, and I debated doing this video or not because today's video is covering a character that I'm not personally familiar with, and that is King GOMAH. So this is a character that's from the Dragon Ball Daima series that's recently been coming out. Obviously, I think we're about 10 or so episodes into that at this point. I have not watched it, so I don't have any attachment to this character, but I figured folks probably do have some attachment to this character, and they're interested in the Daima line, so I want to make sure I still covered it here on the channel. But keep that in mind as I'm going through some of these images and just giving my overall thoughts. I don't have an attachment to this character, so that's probably going to come across in some of the opinions that I do give for King GOMAH. So we'll not waste any time. We're going to jump right into looking at this guy. I do want to point out too, let me know what you guys think about the audio change. I made some tweaks to the audio, so if you prefer this, let me know in the feedback comments down below. So first photo we have here is King GOMAH, just kind of his typical up-close shot of the character with a smiling face. As I've talked about, I'll probably reference this a bunch of times. I don't know the lore of this character, so I'm just clearly just going off of aesthetic appearance for King GOMAH. So we have him holding his staff here. He almost looks like something from like Alice in Wonderland with like a ace of cards almost look to him, where he's got that red and black combination, wearing a cape. Overall, decent look to his aesthetic, but not much to go off of here. We just have him holding the staff in one hand and the other hand just along his waist side, so not much to call out here other than the facial expression that he is giving here. In the next image, as usual, which is kind of a zoomed out version of it, so we get the full body shot, seeing the entire staff, seeing the entire cape, and seeing the lower body. He's definitely very top heavy and round in the torso area. Feels like his legs are very weak parts of his body, so curious to see how the articulation is going to look there, or if it's going to be a little bit hard to keep him standing, because a lot of times you have those characters where there's so much on the top half, especially like Super Saiyan 3 Goku is one that comes to mind, where it's just so much weight on the top half. You have to make sure you put his positioning of his feet just right. I'm not sure we're going to have the issue with this guy or not, but that's something to potentially be aware of just with having those smaller legs for this character. All right, next up we have more of an aggressive look to him. Different face here with the teeth gritting face, and the hands are pretty much the same. We have the left open palm hand as well. We have the cape flowing more in the back, so a little bit more of an action pose by him here, but not a whole lot of difference as far as from one shot to the other than the face, the hand, and the cape going backwards. So not a whole lot to call out here, just kind of your typical action view of the character. Next up, this is kind of a hilarious image. I imagine this face looks like something that would be appearing in the anime itself, so let me know down in the comments below if this is a face the character has made in the show. It feels like a scene-specific situation where he had that very shocked face, and then he has the open palm hands as well, and his feet are just off the ground, just in total stun of what's going on in front of him. So not a bad look. I feel like, as I said, this is very specific, likely to a specific scene. So Tamashii normally pretty good about including something from certain scenes that make the figure stand out as being, hey, you can think of this point in time in the show where he did this specific thing. Next up, we have him sitting with one of his legs just bent up. So we see a little bit of the articulation on the knee there. Looks like just a little ball joint on the knee. And he's sitting on like a clear block, it almost looks like. I don't know if that's like an ice block or just like a clear block. It may be, this guy obviously comes across as being somewhat of a like mage of some kind of like wizard or magic individual, just having that staff. So perhaps it's something he just put together there and he's now sitting on it. Just kind of looks like he's playing like he's like the king of the throne at this point in time, and he's just sternly getting news of some information he's not happy with and just not pleased with what's going on. So different face here. We have more of a frowny face, and then as mentioned, we have, other than that, not much different, just his leg up on this block that he's sitting on. So curious to see how well he actually can sit, because a lot of these photos are obviously staged, so can he actually sit on what he's sitting on there? We'll have to see when we get more like actual in-person shots of this guy specifically. So all right, next up we have a yelling face. So a lot of facial expressions from this guy. That seems to be the really unique part of him. It doesn't feel like he has a lot going on beyond that. Like he has just his regular torso, his arms with the normal hand variations that we do get. So he's holding the staff in his left hand this time, so, and he has the open palm, like fully open on the right side, and then we just have his legs just straight like we've seen before. So really the call out here is that yelling face. Once again, seems like some very aggressive facial expression that he probably made in the show, and it seems like the point of this character is to be very demonstrative in some of the appearances and just reactions he probably gives, and just he's very outspoken aloud. He gives the impression of being, so not a bad image we have there. Next up, we're back to the frowny face, and we have the crossed arms on. So curious to see how well the crossed arms will work for this guy. I know a lot of times I feel like they've gotten better over the last couple releases, but the crossed arms are always a toss-up on how easy they are to use. I feel like a lot of times they're so tough, you either put them on and keep them on forever, or you just don't even bother to mess with it because it's something that's going to be such a hassle to mess with. So not a bad look here. Once again, just shows him receiving some kind of bad news that he's not happy with, or he's just very frustrated with whoever's in front of him. So not a whole lot to go off of that as well. From there, we're going on to accessories for Goku. So that's it for the actual main character of King GOMAH. So beyond that, we have 3 accessory photos for Goku specifically. So I'm curious to see, I'll talk about it a little bit more later, but are people buying this because they want King GOMAH? Or are they buying this because they want the extra accessories for Goku? And this already gives me a vibe of like a DLC situation where I think of like the Gammas, like Gamma 1, Gamma 2. It kind of was an unfortunate launch situation because I feel like when Gamma 1 and Gamma 2 came out to Premium Bandai, when you had to order them in time, not many people had an attachment to those characters. And then the pre-release window came and went, and people eventually wound up liking those characters, at least Gamma 2, and you couldn't order them anymore because it was already previously, released in that pre-release period. But I feel like the reason people did buy them when they were out was for the extras. You had the Gohan cape, you had the Gohan Super Saiyan hair, and that's really the incentive to buy these characters that we don't have any attachments to, and it feels like that's kind of what's happening here once again. So we'll look at the accessories we do get. Looks like we get a Goku very long pole extended here, so another option for Goku as far as the pole inclusion, just a longer one potentially here. Almost looks like it could be like the one we had on the adult Goku back in the day. Maybe it's a little thinner to fit this smaller hand, I'm not sure exactly with that. But either way, another accessory for Mini Goku, which seems like, as mentioned, that Gohan from Superhero was the DLC character that everybody came with accessories for that character. Feels like Goku Mini is now the version of that for Daima. You're getting all these accessories for Goku with these other characters. It's seeming like that's kind of the direction we're going, to try to incentivize buying them and getting the whole package. Next up, this is the coolest thing I've seen thus far. So we have Goku spinning his pole around in his right hand, and we can't really get a good shot of it, but I have a strong feeling that his right hand is probably one of those situations where he has the open palm and just one of those pegs on it, and the winding pole probably just plugs right into the peg. So that makes it a lot easier to actually use it and pose with it. Obviously at the right angles it looks kind of goofy because you can clearly see he's got like a flesh tone thing stuck in his hand, but I think more often than not this will work, having it just behind him primarily, and even if it's in front of him, you're looking at the pole, and now we're looking at the attachment to his hand. So I have a strong feeling that it's going to be one of those where the inclusion is a little peg on his hand and keeps it firmly placed on his hand. So cool accessory here. I will say, without having an attachment to the main character for this release, this is an addition that I feel like is a cool inclusion of having that pole and more of a combat mode. It's kind of making me think of when Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had, I think, the Donnie one, where he had like the spinning bow that he had there. So just showing the weapon in action is kind of cool to include here. And then finally we get another version of that. We have him holding his pole with both hands, swinging it forward, and we get somewhat of an animated look where it's like slashing down, where we see where it has been and where it's going. So just showing kind of that in motion swing of him pulling the pole down and whacking somebody ultimately with it. So really cool accessory inclusions for the Goku Mini with this one. And as I talked about, I think that's what they're going for. I'm obviously biased because I haven't watched Daima, so I don't have an attachment to King GOMAH regardless. So maybe most people are thinking, oh, I love King GOMAH, and oh, it comes with Goku accessories. That's a cool combination of the two. But I still have a strong feeling a lot of people don't have an attachment. Either they're like me and they haven't watched Daima yet, or they have and they've only seen this guy for a handful of episodes, so it's hard to say, yeah, I definitely want that figure. But they're trying to get you on what you do want, which is the accessories of the pole for Goku Mini. And those are very tempting for me personally. If it was any other character where I had at least a marginal interest in, I think I would be somewhat sold on it, but since I don't have an attachment to King GOMAH, and it's possible I'll have watched the show by the time the pre-release window of this closes, but for me personally, as we're kind of giving a recap of King GOMAH, he's not a character that I feel like I personally need, as we're going through the details of it as well. So pre-orders drop this week, December 13th is when they officially come out. The $75 price point for King GOMAH is a tough one for me to swallow, and I know prices are just continuing to be at the higher end of things, especially on Premium Bandai. They want to pitch these as being premium figures, but King GOMAH is not somebody I personally need in my collection. You know, I haven't gone down the Daima line. If I do eventually, King GOMAH is not going to be the first one I go with, just because I don't know this character. I don't have the backstory for him. I don't have an interest for him ultimately. So what are your guys' thoughts on that price point? It's hard for me to judge because I don't have that attachment, so it's easy for me to say, yeah, 75 is more than I'd be willing to pay. But I don't know if he ultimately comes with enough that makes that really worthwhile. Like, King GOMAH himself really is a basic figure. Like, he almost has like the same inclusions that a budget figure would have. Obviously, he has a staff. We'll have to see the details on like that block he's sitting on as well, but there doesn't feel like, beyond the Goku inclusions, that we're getting $75 worth of stuff. And maybe if you say, you know, each one of those Goku accessories are like $10 each, then you get it down to being like $45 for King GOMAH, and that is more reasonable at that point, I will say. But I don't know, it just doesn't feel like a worthwhile purchase for me personally. Going through what's included here, I know we gave a recap of it, but we'll just look at the entire set. So we have the main body, exchangeable left and right hands. So as far as what those are, definitely the closed grip, the grabbing the staff hands, the open palm hands with the fingers kind of curled at the end, the open palm hands with the fingers just fully spread out. Then obviously we get the crossed arms as well. So quite a variety of hands, but it's kind of what we typically get with a Figuarts release. And then the expression parts, we obviously ran through those. We get the smiling face, we get the frowny face, we get the teeth gritting face, we get the shocked face, we get the yelling face. So very expressive for a character. I will say, if I'm giving any pros and cons, this character is very expressive. It seems to be like that's his character, his personality. So they do a good job at having that relayed from this character. Then beyond that, it says exchangeable head parts. I don't know if I noticed it. Let me take a look back at some of the images here, because it felt like the head was pretty much the same. Maybe it's one of those things where when you change the face out, it fits the head differently, so they put a different mold on it. That's the only thing I can really think of for exchangeable head parts, because his head looks mostly the same across the board. It's probably one of those things where you have more of a curved head on some of them, so they just have to include a second head for some of the faces. That's my assumption. So as mentioned, we have the crossed arms, we have the cane, and then the bonus parts, the 3 Goku accessories, then exchangeable right hand part. That does make me feel like that one where he's spinning the pole in his hand is probably just a plug-in piece for that hand. So yeah, what are your guys' thoughts overall? That's kind of a recap of King GOMAH. I said it before, but this is a figure that I don't personally need. Even if I had an interest in him, I feel like that $75 price point, while it can make sense with some of the points I made about each accessory being on the high end, let's say $10, King GOMAH only being around that 45 price point himself, I could see it if you like the character, but for me, yeah, it doesn't make sense for me personally. Going through the list, though, I'm curious. I don't think it said anything about that thing he was sitting on, so I'm not sure if that block he was sitting on is actually included with the figure. It doesn't say it is, so maybe it's just an included accessory where you have him sitting down showing off the articulation of the leg. It's not actually part of the character. Not sure about that one because it's not mentioned in the details, but let me know down below as well. Is that something that he does use in the show, or is that something that's just here for a prop purpose, showing off his lower body being kind of bended in different ways? So yeah, overall, as I mentioned before, what are you guys' thoughts on this figure? Is he one you're going to pick up, or is this something you're thinking like, I could probably pass on it? So I'm not sure how far they're going to go with the Daima line. It feels like they're going pretty far with it, so I'm not sure if that's the wisest choice since we haven't fully gotten through Daima at this point. Obviously, they're trying to make it something significant, but it's hard to... I feel like a big thing with action figures specifically are nostalgic references. And when you don't have nostalgia for the character yet, it's hard to get buy-in on that. I'm thinking of that when they have like Sandland come out, and I'm not sure how well that figure sold because I saw it like 50% off some places. So it feels like when something new comes out, you have to give it time before people are invested in it. And I get they're trying to get you kind of interested now and buy it before you can think about it, but I don't know if that's necessarily the smart move long term. So as I said, give your thoughts and feedback down below on King GOMAH as a whole in this release. Love to see all your thoughts there. Appreciate you guys so much for watching, and I hope to talk to you again soon.